Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now, where we investigate everything AI. I'm your host. I'm Greg Matusky. I'm also the CEO and founder of Gregory FCA. And at Gregory FCA, we do a lot on tech enablement as a PR firm, but we also are very much a bedrock of the financial services industry, and probably top 10 financial services firm in the country, and the players that we represent all across the country. So every once in a while, we really like to delve in on how AI is going to impact financial services. And I couldn't have found a more appropriate guest for today. John O'Connell is the founder of the Oasis Group, which helps RIAs, wealth management firms, really manage their tech enablement, the whole process of digital transformation, and what they need to do. But he's also a real student of AI, and not just where it is today as far as generative, but also where it's going in the realm of financial services. John, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Greg, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Did I sum that up correctly? Is that what you're up to in this world of ours?
Absolutely. I mean, we help firms with technology transformation. We also help them do things around cybersecurity, and then data lakes, data warehousing, and of course, AI.
Now, your background is a technical one. Tell us a little bit about that. Let's set the credentials so we understand you have real credibility in what we're going to talk about here today.
No, thank you very much. I actually started my career as a programmer, believe it or not, during the first AI winter. And we've had a couple of AI winters. So I actually graduated college during the first AI winter, and I was working in programming for many years at firms like Merrill Lynch and KPMG, Marek. Then I wound up moving to a company called Sybase, did a couple of startup companies, all in the technology space. Worked at Oracle for like 8.5 years, was in the C-suite of a couple of global publicly traded companies. And then I created this in 2019. And that's basically where we help firms with their technology transformation, data warehousing, AI, and then cyber.
So where did the thought come to concentrate on financial services? You could have gone anywhere, and you chose Temple. That's the saying at Temple University here in Philadelphia, but you could have chose anywhere, and you chose financial services and that the technology side of that. Why?
Well, it was a little bit by accident. I was actually a rocket scientist when I first started in college. I studied aerospace engineering, but at the time, everyone was becoming more friendly with M&A, and I wound up watching the job market get smaller and smaller. So I transferred to computer science and mathematics, and my first job out of college was with Merrill. I knew a couple of people at Merrill Lynch. They gave me a shot, and that was it. I fell in love with financial services, and I actually did my MBA at Rider, not that far down the road over by Princeton.
For sure.
In finance.
Gotcha.
So I was hooked, and when I got out of college, that was it. I stayed in it forever.
Let's go back to one of the things you said earlier. You called it an AI winter. Tell us a little bit about the rocky road of AI, because what we're familiar with is since, November of 2022, right? When the world changed for us, because generative AI, a consumer-friendly, a user-friendly interface, which was unlike anything we'd ever seen, but this certainly wasn't the first foray or learnings about AI. Put a little flesh on that, on those bones for us, so that we can understand really, where are we in this whole morass?
Absolutely. I mean, AI really came out, believe it or not, in like the 40s. We started really getting down that path. Many people are probably familiar with the what's called the Turing test, right? Which is to determine whether or not AI is close enough to human. Well, that was developed by Alan Turing, the same guy that broke like the Enigma code. And it's in actually the movie, The Imitation Game is based on that test, right? So the test is actually called The Imitation Game, but it's more colloquially known as the Turing test. So AI has been around for a very long time. And AI had some really great advances. So AI was able to learn and beat people in checkers and chess. In fact, there's a very famous chess program that was created at the University of Chicago where it competed against the Russian Technical Institute in chess. Basically, they competed with one another. And that happened really in the early 60s. Then what happened is we basically ran out of computing power. AI began to really consume more computing power than we were able to throw at it. That was the cause of the first AI winter, and that kind of happened.
Hang a
Really
date
kind of
on that for
around.
me. Hang a date on that for me. When would you say was the first AI winner?
So the first AI winter was around between like 80, 85 and like 91 was one of the was really the one of the bigger AI winners. And people
And what
would
was it
say,
about that? Was it we didn't have enough compute, or was it that the what we had took too much computing power? It hadn't been optimized yet, or was it a factor of everything?
it was a little bit of a factor of everything. I mean, the first AI winter was all based around computing power. The second AI winter, which I'm going to correct myself. The second one was really like kind of 85 to like 92. The reason that second AI winter happened was a confluence of things. Number one, people really couldn't figure out the use cases for AI. They were like, well, what is this actually going to do for us? Is it going to be going like more of a chat bot? Like, we don't have a lot of natural language processing yet. It was still kind of nascent. And back then, AI was really geared around games. How do I learn checkers? How do I learn chess? How do I beat people in checkers and chess and things like that? So people struggled with kind of the use case. And then, unfortunately or fortunately, Tim Berners-Lee rolled out the World Wide Web. So all the money that was going towards AI went whoop, immediately towards the World Wide Web. And that was what really caused that second AI winter. That broke around the early 2000s, right? And the reason that broke in the early 2000s, you may remember IBM Deep Blue beat Kasparov in chess. That was really like the beginning of the thawing of that second AI winter. And when that happened, essentially, you started seeing really significant advancements and significant investment in AI at that point. IBM began to really work a lot more on neural networks, which really kind of changed the game. And then, of course, IBM's program wound up winning Jeopardy. So there's a very famous picture of IBM Watson that won Jeopardy at like, I don't know, $1 million. And then the second place guy is the guy that's actually hosting Jeopardy today. What happened to the third place guy?
No one ever remembers.
I guess coming in third in the AI race means that you're out of a job, because I don't know what happened to that poor fella.
Well, I'm a great track and field fan, and we all know that Roger Bannister was the first man to break the 4-minute mile. What we don't know is that 2 weeks later, another Englishman, or I think it was an American, broke it by 3 seconds instead of a few tenths. But no one ever remembers him, because no one ever remembers his name. And that's interesting, because I think that does play into what ChatGPT did, right? Like, there was AI before that, kind of like, there was always a North America, right? It was always here. And the Vikings had traveled to here. Polynesians had traveled. Siberians had traveled and set up encampments, we now know. But really, everything didn't align until Christopher Columbus came. And that was because there was technology in ships, there was infrastructure and trade, and everything was perfect. There was a demand, right? We wanted these goods from Asia, but couldn't afford to do it in overland routes. So it really came together in AI in that area, and that we had enough compute, we had enough bandwidth, and it was fascinating to me, John, because I am not in your business. I'm a storyteller all my life, and I had always struggled to teach other people how to develop content, how to write. It's very difficult, right?
It is very difficult.
It is a neural network. I'm convinced that you have to train your brain in two realms, right? One is the data, which is syntax, grammar, spelling, and the other is thought, which is messaging, narrative development. And typically, both of those neural networks, and most writers, I would say, takes a long time to develop. And I would always give training sessions in writing and really be excited and upbeat. And I thought for sure that this is the one I'm going to turn on light bulbs. And then, 2 weeks later, no one would remember any of it, because it really isn't something you can remember. It's more something that you grow a feel for, which is a lot like AI, right? Like originally I thought with generative, John, we were going to have to template all this so that you'd go on and this was your memo writer. This was your LinkedIn writer, right? This was your capital raise news release writer.
Yep.
But it's not really like that. Like people that know how to drive messaging start with what you had said, natural language processing, which for many people is still a buzzword. But break that down for us. What does that really mean and how you interface with a machine?
So there's a couple of things to unpack with what you just said too, right? So we are seeing these specializations emerge, right? And we call them co-pilots, not the Microsoft Copilot product, but in the AI community, we call these co-pilots. So you may have a wealth management co-pilot, which knows the difference between an IRA and an RIA, right?
Right.
You may have an engineering
or the
co-pilot.
Irish Republican Army, right?
Yeah, exactly. You may, so these co-pilots they're being built and they're much more specific, right? So when you think of OpenAI or any of the GPT models, what are they really? They're generalists. So if you ask any generalist a question, it's going to answer a question for you, but it's not going to go to a depth that truly a practitioner in the business would want to get to.
Let's peel that onion back. Let me play the devil's advocate this morning.
Sure.
I'm on LinkedIn with one of my favorite thought leaders. He was a guest on the podcast. He is a dean of students at the New York Stern School of Business, right? Connor Grenren, right? That's his name. Love the guy. And his lesson for today was generalists are going to rule the world in generative AI, and specialists will fall short. And the evidence he uses is that, for instance, OpenAI still scores better than the best specialized medical LLM in the world, right? And why is that, right? His one theory is that it sees more of the world. It understands a little bit more how humans act, so it can tease out conclusions that maybe are not assumed in the specialized model. So your thoughts on that? Hit me hard. If
I'm gonna be a contrarian. I'm gonna have a contrarian viewpoint to that for a moment, right? So when you think about how an AI model works, you feed the AI model data. Now you do feed it an enormous amount of data, right? I mean, these are not measured in millions. These are measured in trillions and quadrillions of data points.
And just in words, I just looked this up this morning. 3.5. A half a trillion words, right?
Half a trillion words.
Half a trillion words. And the original training of 3.5, ChatGPT 3.5.
And that's 3.5. That's not even 4.0, right? There are models that I'm working with large financial services organizations where they're measuring like 40 to 50 billion data points, right? So what does that really mean though? Well, that data point, there's a lot of challenges with those data points. The first is it is a generalist view of the world, right? So going into a significant level of depth is going to be really difficult for some of these models to get to. Now, the more data points you feed it, the deeper it'll be able to go. However, ask for the history of the markets, from a bang to bust to a generative AI model, and you're going to get a very different result depending on which model you've used, right? So whether you use like Jasper or you use ChatGPT or you use a different model, you're going to get a different result set. Why am I seeing a different result set? Well, if they've all been fed the same data, I should get the same answer, right?
Right.
What you're seeing is the way that those connections have been made in a neural network is the same way that a human mind makes connections. Neural networks are really designed to make connection points just like a human mind does. When you use your generative text on your phone today, does it always get the word right when you're typing a sentence? The next word, it's trying to predict it and get it right. No, it doesn't.
Right.
It's gotten better, but it doesn't always get it right. Why is that? It's the nuances associated with it, right? In every language, there is a certain level of slang that's associated with that. And in every language, you're going to have just slightly different ways of saying things. Even in the United States, we have different dialects. If you ask someone from the South how their day is versus someone from the Northeast, you're going to get a slightly different response with the same gist associated with it. You're going to get that with the GPT model, right? So the reason I take a contrarian view to your other guest is I think GPT models are going to be fantastic starting points for you to be able to formulate a thought. Okay, but you started your description of yourself today as you're a storyteller. Having a story is very simple in theory, right? Look at every movie we've ever seen. It has a build, plot point one, something happens to the protagonist. Then we have some other stuff that happens. Plot point two, we begin to get to a resolution, and then there's a resolution to the film. Every movie, like you can pick up Sid Field's screenwriting, you can pick up any screenwriting film, and it's going to tell you exactly what to do in Act 1, plot point, Act 2, plot point, Act 3. Why do some movies do really well with that and some don't? If it's a formula, every movie should be fantastic because it follows this formula. The reason it doesn't is because they meander a little bit. They're not exactly crisp in their thought process. Plot point 1 and 2 may not be recognizable to the audience, right? In which case you'll get movie reviews that say that movie was everywhere. I don't know what was going on. Same thing with anything that you generate with GPT. GPT is going to give you an amazing starting point, but is it really going to capture the original thought that you have that says, this is what I want plot point 1 to be, this is what I want plot point 2 to be, this is what the build of my character is, this is why you care about them. Let me tell you that story. You're not going to get that from GPT. It will give you fantastic outlines. It'll give you a great way of starting, but weaving that together and getting the human portion of into that story, AI is not going to be able to do that. AI is a computer program, and I know I'm a computer programmer. It's going to do exactly what you tell it to do, the exact same way every time you tell it to do it. The only difference between a neural network is the pathway that it takes, which can meander a little bit, just like a human being can meander.
Well, let's go deeper there, because I'll give you the difference. I'll give you another difference, right? And that is, it isn't software, so you can always get a different output from the exact same prompt. You can get it from different days. You can get it with different times of the year, right? That was a study that showed that you get weaker results in December out of some of these generative models. I think as a storyteller, though, right, we're very familiar with that process. We could have 10 people, great writers, work on a story. You could have 10 great scripts, very different, right? Very different. And that kind of inconsistency isn't something that is detrimental to the creative process. It's very additive, right?
It's additive. But
then we go into financial services where you do want the consistency and the depth of knowledge. If you're writing a screenplay, you may not want to know what the VIG rate is, right? But you would want to know something went wrong, right? Financially. So tell me about that then. What do you see will take shape as far as how these financial services companies are going to use technology, how they're going to maybe create their own LLMs? Perhaps that's what you're talking about, but walk me through that. I'm interested in learning.
So I think that you are going to see financial services firms create their own LLMs. Some of that is going to be because they want that proprietary nature of their advice in there. And part of that is going to be because just cybersecurity wise, it's safer to have it separate from everybody else. The reason that you see that is because, you know, think of this, when a model learns something, how does it unlearn it? So if I inject bad data into a model, will the model use that bad data in its learning process? Absolutely. How do I clean that out? Well, there's not a really good way of doing that today. That's not a problem statement that we've figured out yet in AI, right? So problem number one, definitely want separate models. Why? Security would be a good portion of that. Second, you want the model to basically espouse your values or your firm's special sauce. Your unique value proposition would be in that result set. Now, that being said,
and you want to be able to, the other point you made, you want to be able to eliminate the negative things, the wrong things that it has learned, right?
Absolutely.
In content, John, that's very prevalent, right? We see that all the time. We call it AI-isms, right? Where they use this language that I always analogize it to a 1960s safety film, right? Of a corporation, you know, in the evolving world of business, safety is now the primary objective, right? You're like, what is that? Where is that coming? No one talks like that anymore.
Yep.
But it's been trained on so much bad data, right? Like so much bad language. We're thrilled to announce, right? It always comes down to we're thrilled to, although with some of our prompts and some of our news writing, we've worked around that. But it's learned so much bad that we have to put in its knowledge base, right? do not use these terms. Do not say it's famous for doing this. It's saying it's not just about apples, it's also about peaches, right?
Yes.
Instead of it's about apples and it's about peaches. And so there are real tells that you can always see, although they say you can't detect AI generated content. We all laugh around here when I get my content guys around, people around. We can always see where the isms are, or it's just bad writing. So go into that with where you're at in financial services and what we need to do. Those 3 points that you brought up.
So it's interesting, right? So first off, I just want to touch on one thing that you mentioned, which I don't think we've highlighted enough: prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is going to become a critical skill for anyone that wants to use AI, right? So that means you have to understand the model that you've got, the LLM that you're working with, and how do you write the right prompt to get the desired result out of that LLM. People can try that today. Just go to, like, if you want to try prompts for AI, go to ChatGPT, put in a bunch of prompts, iterate your prompt, and see what results you get. You're going to find that you're going to get very different results depending on how you've asked that question in the prompt. Second thing, I would say, go to like a DALL-E or like a Canva, Canva Magic, or any of those other tools, all of which are very open. You can easily get access to these. Try a bunch of prompts. Become a student of prompt engineering, because that's going to become a critical skill set, I think, moving forward. Now, the second thing you mentioned, how does the AI speak in a voice that's much more natural or that matches you a little bit more? Well, there's tools out there, like here at the Oasis Group, we use Jasper AI. Why do I use that? The more writing you do with Jasper AI, the more corrections you do with the writing that it outputs, the more it learns your voice. And it actually saves that. So it'll say, like, now if we write something in Jasper AI, or if we use it for an outline, we use a lot of outlining we do with AI. The analysis we do, we can't do with AI. A lot of that is us putting our thought process in, but the outlines of some of the documents that we do, we can generate that with AI. But the prompt engineering, we're going to get different result sets. And by using something like Jasper that has our voice associated with it, the outputs that we get for the outlines are much more akin to what we would normally, the normal speech you would see, or the normal document you would see coming out of the Oasis Group. So I think that there is ways for you to be able to get there. And you mentioned your team today does a little bit of a brute force, right? You've learned how to write prompts to get the result set that you want out of the AI models that you're using.
That's right. And one of the reasons we do that is we're writers, right? So
absolutely.
We come to it with an unfair advantage. And the unfair advantage is that we know where we want to take it. So, and I've done this. In March of last year, we released something called Write Release. It was a free news release writer, right? We put it online. Anyone could try it. And it was templated, right? And we used it. It gets great results. I mean, I still, all over the world, I've gotten endorsements for this thing. And we got around, for instance, we're thrilled by relating it to the objective of the company. Like that line now has to go back to some sort of pipeline or vision for the company. And all of a sudden, it's no longer we're thrilled with this new hire. It's that this new hire now completes our XYZ in our vision for growing the company or something like that. So,
yep.
So we go back and forth. If you're a junior member here at Gregory FCA, you may really benefit from a very formatted, prompted, templated approach, right?
Yep.
But when as you become more, I think, focused on the end product and not so much just being the intermediary of filling out forms, we find that people break out of that, and we're ChatGPT 4 Teams users, and they really value that. They may use the knowledge base to add everything about the client. We have a couple prompts where we find the voice of the client by the client taking a AI test of matching their voice to famous nonfiction writers. But it's an interesting thing. It's like this back and forth, right? You have some of the school of thought that think it templated and that walks you through questions is the best way, which I agreed with, but now I would never use. I just, instead, I go to the prompt and I write very detailed, longhand, natural language. I thank it. I'm very polite. It's It's like my junior associate who, when it's wrong, I say, good try, but really what I was talking about was XYZ. Can we focus on that? So it is an interesting world. And where do you think that's going? Or better yet, in financial services, right? Give me the game plan for a wealth management firm or an RIA. What's your vision for where this tech stack will sit, where AI will sit, and what the ultimate evolution will be?
So I think, AI, like anything else, like any of the program that you're using, right? It's a tool and it needs to become a force multiplier within your firm. So the way I look at AI today is for smaller firms, right? They need to be able to do brand awareness. They need to be able to get out there in the marketplace. People need to know who they are. For those folks, I highly recommend start learning prompt engineering, start learning how to use AI. If for nothing else, start producing a blog every week or every other week. Start with monthly. Let's just go there first. Why don't you get some content out monthly? It's a newsletter or a blog. And then as you become more and more familiar with AI and you start getting better result sets because you're increasing your prompt engineering skills, bring that blog down to every 2 weeks, and generate content that's going to build brand awareness for your firm. I think that's a great place to start. Where am I seeing more like the intermediary firms going, which is what we help with them. We help a lot with the Oasis group. It's mining their data, right? So how do they get, most of these firms have a large number of clients, 10,000, 20,000 clients. How do you figure out commonality around those clients? And how do you figure out the real outliers, right, with those clients? So being able to take that data out of your CRM system, out of your portfolio management system or your portfolio accounting system, bring that into a data warehouse and use AI to really generate insights off of that data. We see that a lot.
So give me an example on that very point, John.
So I'll give you a really good example. We worked with a firm recently and they had a hypothesis and we shared that hypothesis that there was probably a lot of concentration risk in their underlying portfolio. So many firms today use model portfolios. A lot of them use them in sleeves, right? So you may have a sleeve for a high growth, right? That sleeve tends to be common across a lot of your clients. Those are primarily populated with ETFs and mutual funds. That's great. If you look below those ETFs, what are the holdings within those ETFs? And do you have a higher level of concentration risk, let's say among the Magnificent Seven firms, right? So your Amazon, Tesla, that, right? How do you get that? Well, you can't get that very easily out of any kind of portfolio accounting system. You've got to get those accounts and their holdings out into a data warehouse. Then you've got to layer on top of that, for this ETF, what are the top 20 holdings in that ETF? Then you have to mathematically take the percentage of the holding in your portfolio, multiply that out across the percentage of the holding within the ETF and the percentage of the holding in that portfolio. And that's going to generate, if you've got 10,000 clients and each of them are in about 20 different securities, or 20 different investments across their sleeves, you've got 200,000. Multiply that again by another 20. Now you got 4 million data points.
Now help me out. So that's teasing out unforeseen concentrations that could bring risk or
unforeseen concentration risk, right? So for example, if you wanted to know, let's say one of the Magnificent Seven, let's say Tesla, it took a large drop in the market. What is that going to do to all of your clients across all your portfolios? Well, unless your client holds an individual position in Tesla, you don't have that visibility. So once you bring it into a data warehouse, then you can begin doing some really interesting things with AI, like aggregating that data and doing what-if analysis using that data, right? That's going to generate some really interesting data points. Because you're building that in AI, it's not like a data warehouse where I run a report and I analyze it as a human being. AI can analyze that data and then send tasks back into your CRM for your advisors or your investment team to go look at. That's a really powerful use case of AI in round robin that's taking just your existing data and running it through some better analysis and then prompting you with actions based upon that analysis.
So that starts with good intentions, right? You have a format. This is what we're seeking. This is our demographic, or this is our idealized portfolio for this demographic. But then it can take you down a blind alley of concentration. And then you want that data to be available to alert your advisors as to how to overcome that that risk
Absolutely.
in their management.
So imagine that being used now in a sales tool, right? So you can say to someone, not only can I look at your underlying holdings, but I can tell you what your underlying concentration risk was within those holdings and why maybe your existing advisor is not doing as good of a job as we could do with your portfolio. Now that's not just a risk reduction. Now you put a sales spin on that, and now that's a business development capability,
That's for
right?
sure.
And
Yeah.
all it was one simple use case that you basically took through to its fruition and then used AI in the back end to not only do the analysis, but then prompt you. That's
And
a
isn't
really
that what
great.
we're really talking? I mean, the whole business has been so commoditized, right? That you're looking for ways on the biz dev side to differentiate yourself, to both show value, but also put out landmines for your competition, right? So the
Correct.
next guy in or next gal in, sorry for the pronouns, but the next person in won't necessarily be able to answer that question.
We used to do this all the time at Oracle. Oracle was an amazing sales organization. We would lay landmines for competition and say to clients, ask them about this when they do a demo for you. Because we knew they couldn't do that, right? And the client would ask them, could you do this? And they would go, no, we can't do that. Okay, well, it would strengthen the argument for Oracle, right? Because we're not only educating the client on pitfalls that they need to watch out for, but we're basically setting landmines for our competition to basically walk in and not have an answer to
Well,
that specific question.
I'm going to steal that because one of the landmines I have is we're very upfront about the use of AI, right? But I'm going to tell my prospects, ask your the competitor what they put in their contracts with regard to AI, because we'll assume all liability for any kind of, because the scaries get the people, right? Oh,
Yep.
You could have a copyright violation for using AI, right? Well, here's one idea. I'll assume all your liability. If you have an issue, I'll defend you. Well, I have an insurance policy, and OpenAI claims that they'll defend any suit that's brought up against copyright violations. So
Yes.
I'm gonna steal that from you, John. So I appreciate it, and
You're very welcome.
I shall buy you a drink. If we meet in person, I will buy you a drink to celebrate that fact.
Outstanding. I'll appreciate that.
So go further for me now.
These
Where
are the areas
going?
where. So now let's think of some of the really large firms that are out there, right? Like Fidelity and Schwab and things like that. So part of what they're trying to drive is a much more intimate customer experience, a much more personalized customer experience. Many people today are frustrated with customer experience that they get today, right? I mean, we're only one step away from the old PBXs. Remember, you used to call and they would say, enter your account number, and you type in a 20-digit account number. And then if they couldn't answer your question, it would transfer to an agent. What's the first thing they say? Can I have your account number? It drives you nuts, right?
It still happens to me with my bank. It still happens.
Imagine a different experience for a moment, right? Imagine a more AI-enabled experience. So instead of you having to type this in, the AI says, hey, Greg, because it knows your phone number when you called. It does a lookup against the CRM, knows your phone number. Hey, Greg, how are you? Can I help you today? Yep, I need to understand, when was the last time I took an RMD and how much was it? Well, excellent. Let me go look that up for you. Give me one moment. And it can, for some simple queries, it can simply query a database and tell you the answer, right? Let's say you get to a point where you can't answer that question. The AI can't answer that question. And it says, hey, you know what, Greg? I'm going to transfer you to a customer service agent, and I'm going to summarize my conversation with you today for that agent so that when they get on the call, they're going to reiterate that summary to you to make sure that we're on the right track. You know as well as I do, I can feed an article to AI today, and it'll summarize the article for me. We do it all the time with Zoom AI or a Copilot with you use Microsoft Teams. Teams will summarize the meeting for you and give you action items. Imagine the customer service agent now picks up the phone and says, Greg, I'm so glad you interacted with Sally, our virtual assistant, and I'm sorry she couldn't answer your question, but I understand you already went through these items with Sally. You got answers to this question. We couldn't answer this one. Why don't you give me 1 minute? Let me go try to look that up for you. Or, Greg, can you tell me a little bit more about what are you really trying to get at here? Maybe it wasn't clear. What are you really trying to get at here so I can help you? What a different customer service experience. They got a summary from AI. They were able to get on the phone and validate that summary. They know what questions you already had answered for them. and they say, can you help me to understand your line of thought? Where are you trying to go with this? Let me make sure I get you the right answer. Completely different experience with AI.
A completely different experience. And also, it really does take it out. I always say, we're leaving the age, the information age, and we're really going into the knowledge age, right? And that's a perfect example. What did the AI do for you? Data collection, information, right? But now the customer service rep has the ability to focus on intelligence. What do you really want to get out of this?
Correct.
Not so much, what is your account number? What is your age? Are you married? Do you have a child going to college? Whatever, right? That's all data, right? And that, for me, as a storyteller, that was all syntax, grammar, verb usage. Now I have my people focusing on messaging, narrative development, call to action, things that are of higher value to the client, but really right on mark with what you're talking about. What do you really want out of me as a provider, right?
Yep.
You don't pay me to know where an Oxford comma goes. You pay me to give you a convincing persona in the marketplace, to help you position yourself, to help you extend your narrative. So with AI, and as you said earlier, this assistant idea, right? It takes away all those things. I always analogize it. Ben's heard the story. Ben's my engineer here. He's heard the story 1,000 times. But, when cars came out in the early 1900s, we wore goggles and gloves and smocks because every 2 miles, the carburetor would need adjusted, right? Today, we don't do that. We don't worry about tinkering with carburetors. We worry about going to great places in total comfort and convenience and luxury. That's what we think about when we think about an automobile. And that's where we have to get to, I think, in many of our business processes, where those things that can be automated, the tedious, the mundane, and the low value will be automated. And it's focusing on where you want to really get to as a client, your real concerns, your real point of pains, and what keep you up at night and make you worry about your future or your family's future.
I have a saying on my whiteboard. It's been there for so long, I don't think I could ever erase it. It says, anything that's not creative should be systematized and delegated. Think about the value. Think about that for a minute, right? If it's not creative, if it's not helping to move the ball forward for the Oasis group, as an example, I should be thinking about how do I systematize that and delegate it. You even earlier in our conversation mentioned, templates are great for people right out of school, right? You're systematizing and delegating some of what needs to happen there, right? And by that, you're creating a force multiplier within your own firm. You can help more people. You can come up with better ideas by doing that, right? It's funny. There's so Jimmy Fallon hosted an award show, and he said that they created 10,000 jokes for the award show, and they only used about 70 or 80 of them, I think, in the show. Why did he do 10,000 jokes? Because you're brainstorming on it, you're trying to come up with the best idea. He had a team of, I don't know, it was like 10 or 20 writers. That was on TV, they showed it. So he's got like 20 writers all writing jokes, right? Some of which may never make it into the show. But he's going through the process of trying to create the best possible product that he can create. And imagine now the force multiplier you can get if you're a small firm and you don't have the luxury of having 20 writers, or maybe they're not working with a Gregory FCA yet, right? But they want to be able to capture that unique voice and figure out how to make a force multiplier out of that. That's where AI, I think, can really help people. It's not going to replace if you want a really tight narrative, go to somebody like Gregory FCA. If you don't have the money yet, or you're trying to get there from here and you're trying to get to a point where you have enough revenue to be able to hire someone to do it, 100% take a look at leveraging AI. But you've got to invest the time in it. You've got to really make the intention of, I'm going to learn prompt engineering. I'm going to get good at this. And then that will give you at least a little bit of a start. Then when they start working with a firm like yours or like any other firm, right? Imagine how much more of an educated consumer they're going to be, and imagine how much better product you're going to work on together.
It's funny you should say that, because all my compatriots are they've asked me repeatedly, why do you give out this information for free? Other PR firms, right? First of all, what I know today, I thought I'd be 3 years ahead, John. I'm 6 months ahead. Whatever I know today, right, is whatever everyone knows today is what I knew 6 months ago. We're moving so quickly. This is all going to be out there as soon as it's available, right? As soon as ChatGPT 5 comes out, we're all going to know. As soon as Sora hit the mark, we all knew about it, right? So there are no secrets. And this is one of the most collaborative communities I've ever seen in technology. Like, I always joke, everything I know about AI, I learned on X, because I just follow thought leaders and I copy what they do. And if I can't get it to emulate what they do, I direct message them, and they're nice enough often to tell me where I'm missing the point or the boat. So there's not a lot of secrets in it if you want to learn it, but there is a lot of time commitment, right? And it really does come down to, and what I found in my own organization is change management. It's not the technology. It's getting people to always think. What you said a couple of moments ago when you said whatever isn't accretive to the process, get rid of. But that's so hard for people to do because they fall back on behaviors they've always had. I've walked into offices with people with blank screens saying, I'm starting to write XYZ. And I said, why are you in Word or why are you in Docs? You should be in ChatGPT, just trying to share with the machine what you know about this. And even if it's wrong, it's a start point. But that behavioral change, very difficult. And it has to be, I think there's a couple things that we've done right. And one is we made a safe place. No one's ever penalized for using AI. I mean, I interview people who say, oh, my firm, they tell me not to use it, right? That's cheating or that's risky. Because they don't really understand it and they don't know how to put safeguards and policies in place, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is you need a coalition of the willing. You've got to work with people who are willing to do what you're talking about. Spend the time learning what its capabilities are, what its limitations are, because that's a point of disappointment for many people. They use it once or twice and they go, oh, it's garbage. Well, it takes a lot more than one or two. It takes a lot more time. And third is you got to know its risks. You got to know its capabilities, its limitations, and its risk. And that takes time. And that's why I'm not concerned that it's going to take business away from me, because I think most financial services companies want to focus on what you said earlier, getting to what's really important with their clients. And that's, if they can do what I do, they should do it, right?
I tell people all the time, Greg, when we do technology projects, a lot of times people are like, well, there's a pretty good cost associated with the technology project. And I say to them, listen, you're going to write a check. You can write a check to your team and you can do it yourself. In which case, take your weighted average cost of capital, figure out what that's going to be for the time period you're going to have. Make into there the fact that you've never done it before. So you're going to be learning on the job and you're going to come up with a price point to do that. Okay. And there's an opportunity price point to do that as well, because you're not going to be servicing clients while you're learning how to do this and then doing it. So that's one way to go. You can hire a third party to do it that maybe doesn't have the same level of experience, in which case you're probably going to have a learning curve there as well. Or you can hire us to do it. Either way, someone has to do it.
Right. Someone's got to do it.
There's no getting around it. Right. So the way I look at AI is I think that there are going to be two firms, and I don't think this is in a very distant future. I think 5 years from now, there's going to be two types of firms. Firms that have embraced AI and understand how to use it, and firms that are selling their business. That's it. That's all there's going to be. And the reason is AI has advanced so quickly, right? AI can pass the bar exam. AI can pass the CFA exam. AI can pass, and by the way, AI doubles in its capability every 6 months.
Yeah, and that blows away Moore's Law.
Blows away Moore's Law. So if you think the best that you can be right now, can you double in 6 months? Because AI can. So when you think of that kind of approach, it's a no-brainer. There's going to be firms that know how to leverage this because it's going to move so incredibly quickly, and firms that don't. And the firms that don't are going to watch the valuation of their firm decrease. They're going to watch that competitive example I gave you before. If you don't think that firm is going to use that sales strategy, they're going to use it.
They're going to use it.
They're going to use it, and they're going to take clients away, ultra high net worth clients away from other advisory firms. So there's going to be firms that embrace AI that I think are going to grow faster and are going to have more force multipliers within their capability than firms who don't. And the firms that don't are going to watch their valuation decline, and they're going to be forced into a position where they need to exit the market.
Well, on that very profound note, I want to thank you for being with us. John, I'm losing my voice, but how can we get in touch with you? How could someone get in touch with you if they'd like to talk more?
So you can get me on LinkedIn, definitely. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm very active there. So you can find me on LinkedIn, John O'Connell at the Oasis Group. You can also find us via our website, which is www.theoasisgrp.com. And we have a very vibrant newsletter. I have about 21,000 people that subscribe to the newsletter. You can get to that right off my website. And then you'll be getting some of my writings around AI and cybersecurity and data and advisor technologies.
Well, right after this, you'll have 21,001 because I'll definitely sign up for it. I want to thank you for taking the time. It was really a fun conversation, and I appreciate what you're doing because I think it's so important to the industry, being out there and being an evangelist, but also putting it in the realm of what people can do right now. So I appreciate your time, and we'll connect again, I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Greg. I really appreciate you having me as a guest, and thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.